Hi you guys, this lesson is on evaluating algebraic expressions. Please make sure that you have that notes guide with you before you start the video. Remember, algebraic expressions are just expressions that they're basically just math sentences that have numbers and variables and different operations, okay? And remember that when we're dealing with expressions, we evaluate expressions. We simplify expressions. We never solve expressions because expressions do not have equal signs. Okay, so that is a really key thing that I want you to know about expressions, is they do not have equal signs. Okay, that is really super important. Now, the word evaluate in math, that just means figure out the answer if. Okay? Whenever we're asked to evaluate, that just means to figure out the answer if. And I'll explain a little bit more about this in just a second. The steps to evaluating algebraic expressions are, number one, we are going to substitute the given numbers for the variables. Another word that you could use instead of substitute is replace. Number two, we are going to use the order of operations to evaluate the numerical expression that we're left with. Okay, so when we start off, it's going to be an algebraic expression. It's going to have variables. But then we're going to substitute the given numbers for the variables or replace those, and then we're going to use the order of operations to evaluate or simplify the numeric expression. So remember, order of operations includes doing parentheses first, then exponents, then all divisions and multiplications, working left to right, whatever comes first in your problem, and then all subtractions and additions, working left to right. Okay, so let's go through a few examples here of how to evaluate. Number one says, evaluate each algebraic expression for a equals 3, b equals -2, c equals -5, and d equals 6. So these are the values of the variables that we're going to substitute in for those variables, or we're going to replace those variables with these values. So on A, the expression for A says 9 times A minus 3 times B. So we're going to rewrite this, but wherever there's a variable, we're going to leave an empty parentheses, because in the place of that variable, we're going to substitute its value. Okay, so instead of the A, right here, we are told that A needs to equal 3. And instead of the B, we're told right here that the B equals -2. Now, once we have substituted the value of the variables, we now simplify this and we make sure we use the order of operations. Okay, this is a subtraction. I'm going to change the subtraction to adding a negative right here. And now we have two multiplications that we need to do. We have this 9 times 3, and we have this -3 times -2, and we need to do both of those before we do the addition. So 9 times 3 is 27, a -3 times a -2 is a +6, and a 27 plus 6 is a 33. Okay, let's go ahead and look at example B. So our first step is to write the expression like it is, except for we are going to replace the variables with their given values. So in this case, our D is 6, our B is a -2, and our C is a -5. Now you have to be careful when you're replacing the variables with these values. You have to write the expression exactly like it is. So instead of the D, we're going to plug in 6. And then I want you to notice that there is a subtraction sign here. So we need to make sure that we write a subtraction sign. And then we have B, which is -2. So notice how this is going to become a subtract a negative 2. Then we have our addition sign, and then we have our c, which is a negative 5. And since our c is a negative 5, we need to square that. Okay, notice how I put the negative 5 in parentheses. That's because it's going to be negative 5 squared. Negative 5 times itself twice. Okay, now we go ahead and simplify using the order of operations. Remember that whenever you have a subtraction, you change this to addition. So this becomes 8 plus, and then in our exponents here, this right here, this operation, negative 5 times negative 5 is a positive 25. And now we need to multiply. 4 times 8 is 32. And then 32 plus 25 is 57. Okay. Next one. Okay, let's go ahead and look at C. Let's read through this together first, and then we will substitute the values for the variables, and then we'll simplify. So C says 12 subtract B times C plus 4 times A times B divided by D. So now we want to take and we want to rewrite this expression, except for instead of the variables, we're going to replace those with these values. Okay, so 12 minus, and then we have a B times C. So I'm going to put both of those in parentheses. We have a negative 2 and we have a negative 5. Then we have an addition sign. Then we have 4 times A, which is 3, times B, which is negative 2. That is going to be divided by D, which is 6. Now, once we have substituted the values for our variables, we are now going to simplify. So let's do this multiplication first. Negative 2 times a negative 5 is a positive 10. We still have our 12 minus 10 plus. Right here, we have a 4 times 3, which is 12, times negative 2, which is negative 24. And then we're going to divide that by 6. So that ends up giving us a negative 4. And now we just need to work left to right. So 12 plus a negative 10 is 2. 2 plus a negative 4 is negative 2. Okay, on this next part, we are supposed to identify and correct the error if x equals 5 and y equals 4. So remember, your very first step is to take the original expression that you've been given, and then you substitute these values of the variables. So let's see if that was done correctly. So this was 6 times by x plus y divided by 2. And you can see that they then wrote this as a 65, but this is 6 times x, so that should have been 6 times 5 plus y, which is 4 divided by 2. So that's the part right there where there was a mistake made. If we look at the next one, it says 2 times x squared subtract y. So let's check here and see if that's been done correctly. We know that our x is 5, so that looks okay to me. 2 times 5 squared, and then subtract 4. And then from there, when you're looking at this expression right here, at this point, when you have 2 times 5 squared minus 4, you should do the exponent before you do the multiplication. So the thing that they did wrong here is they did 2 times 5 and then squared that. So this right here is a place where they went wrong. Okay, now at this point, I am going to pick a few more to do with you for your independent practice, and then I want you to finish this before for me for tomorrow. Let's see, which is a good one? I think this one right here, number 7. So number 7 says negative 2 times by p, subtract n, and then that is all going to be raised to the third power. So our first step is to write this expression just like it is, but instead of the variables, we're going to replace those with these values right here. Okay, so instead of a p, we're going to plug in 8, and instead of an n, it's a negative 12. Okay, now we can simplify. We need to do what's in the parentheses first. So we need to do all of this before we do the exponent. So multiplication first, negative 2 times 18 is negative 16. Then we have subtract a negative 12. Remember with subtraction, you do keep, change, change. So a negative 16 and a positive 12 is going to be a negative 4. That's what we're left with in our parentheses. And then that negative 4 gets raised to the third power. So that becomes negative 4 times negative 4 times negative 4. Negative 4 multiplied by itself 3 times. So negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. 16 times negative 4 is a 64, and it should be negative, right? Because a negative times a negative is a positive, and a positive times a negative ends up giving us a negative. So that would be a negative 64. Okay, let's look at a few more of these. I'm trying to pick out the ones that I think you may be confused by. Let's do number 10. Okay, on number 10, we have a q, subtract, inside the brackets, 9 times m minus, in the parentheses, 2 times n plus p. So here we go. Instead of the q, that's going to be a negative 16. Then we have our subtraction sign. Remember, I'm writing this exactly like it is. And then we have our 9 times by m, and our m is a 4. Then we have a minus sign. Then we have another parentheses, which gives us a 2 times n, which is negative 12, plus p, which is 8. Whoa, close bracket. Okay. So we are going to start inside our bracket with this parenthesis. That's where we're going to start. Okay, we start with the innermost grouping symbols first. So 2 times negative 12 is negative 24. Negative 24 plus 8 is a negative 16. Then we have our subtraction sign. Okay, so we just took care of all this. This was a negative 16. Then we still have this subtraction sign. And then we have 9 times 4, which is 36. All of this is in our bracket, and we need to continue to simplify. We're not done yet. So from there, we do keep, change, change. 36 plus 16 is a 52. Okay, that's what ended up being inside our bracket. Then we have the subtraction, and then we have a negative 16. Okay, so a negative 16 subtract 52 is where we're at. Remember, with subtraction, you do keep, change, change. So keep, change, change. Both of these are now negative. If you do a negative 16 with a negative 52, you get a negative 68. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and do one more for you, and then I'm going to have you work on the rest of this on your own. Okay, so the one I'm going to do for you is number 4. That looks like a good one. 3 times by m squared minus 2 times m times p. Now on this one, what I want you to notice is the m is being squared. The exponent is only an exponent for the m. Okay, so when you write this, it needs to be 3 times by 4 raised to the second power minus 2 times m times p, and our m is 4 and our p is 8. Okay, so here we go. Exponents first. 4 to the second power is 4 times 4. So that is 16. And then 16 times 3 is going to be 48. Then we have our subtraction. Then we have these 3 right here that are being multiplied together. So 2 times 4 times 8. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 times 8 is 64. Now this is really a negative 64. Okay, and up here, if you would have changed this to adding a negative, negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Negative 8 times positive 8 is negative 64. Now we just need to combine a 48 and a negative 64. If you have 48, but you owe 64, you need to subtract these two numbers to figure out how much you still owe. And that would be 16. Negative 16. Voila. Okay. Now at this point, what I want you to do is you are going to finish these 1 through 12. This is your assignment that is due for tomorrow. I need you to have it done before you come to class. But as you're working on these, what I would do is I would do 3 of them, and then I would come back and check with me to make sure that you've done those correctly. So do like 3 or 4 and then check it off, and then do 3 or 4 and then check it off. And then, like I said, this needs to be complete before you come to class tomorrow.